being biased against him, Koko filed a review application with the Joburg High Court this week, challenging the Commission's report. He wants it to set aside its findings, remarks and conclusions, which he says are not relationally connected to the evidence. Koko insists that he only ever acted in what he believed were the best interests of Eskom, but that the Commission ignored his affidavits and didn't properly interrogate witnesses who implicated him. Bernadette Wicks reports.
Machela Koko says his perception was that the Commission's legal team and investigators came in with a theory about the case and argues they were one-sided in their efforts to prove this theory and counter any alternatives. He argues the Commission failed to interrogate critical witnesses, which he says would have weakened the narrative against him. Rather, he says, their evidence was accepted as common cause, especially when it implicated him, and that the Commission's approach lacked rigor, especially when it came to testimony in support of the version he says the Commission's legal team and investigators favored. He says it failed to examine witnesses who were, as he puts it, hiding the truth because it was skewed against him. Bernadette Wicks, Eyewitness News.
As yet another incident halts operations at Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, the Gauteng Department of Health suspects it's an inside job. A copper pipe supplying water to the two of the hospital's theatres was cut yesterday following the replacement of a stolen pipe supplying oxygen. The department says the plant room where the pipes were cut is not exposed, meaning someone knew where to find it. Gloria Mutswere reports.
Nurses walked into two flooded theatres, which are used for emergency surgeries. Describing the incident as sabotage, the department also believes the perpetrator was familiar with the hospital's operations. Gauteng Health Department spokesperson Mutalembali Mutiba.
You can tell that it's probably from people that know the system, that know exactly what they were doing, because they knew exactly where to go to cause disruption of services within the facility.
He adds that this latest incident has also been referred to the police for investigation. The department says no stone will be left unturned to find the culprits who endangered the patients' lives. Gloria Mutswere, Eyewitness News.
The ANC has made history by electing 41 women into its top decision-making structure, the National Executive Committee. The candidates were elected along with 39 male counterparts at the elective conference in Joburg, which adjourned earlier this week. Now, despite the ANC making strides in gender parity, political analyst Dr. Oscar van Heerden says the same cannot be said for diversity in the party.
White, Indian and coloured in South Africa constitutes about 21% collectively. Now, at the moment in the NEC leadership, there's less than 5% represented. This is a big problem, and I think the ANC is beginning to take note of it.
Joburg Mayor Mpopalatse says the unavailability of land across the city has made it difficult to respond to the demand for shelter among flood survivors. Palatse says while the city is able to provide short-term relief for families displaced during heavy rains, officials also need to relocate families on flood plains before disaster strikes again. Palatse made the comments during an assessment of the damage caused by this month's floods, with Roodepoort, Soweto and Centurion among the areas that were hardest hit by the persistent rain. The damage to infrastructure is now estimated to be more than 420 million rands, up from 300 million rand. Palatse says the city's housing crisis is amplified by the influx of undocumented foreign nationals.
We're also doing our own investigations to find out who owns the land and what options we have as a city. Where land is privately owned, we are reaching out to the private owners to look at the potential for the city to take over that land and see which parts of the land is habitable. So a lot of work is happening. Where people need to be relocated, we are doing that.
And according to tax figures released by a congressional panel, Donald Trump paid no income tax during the final full year of his presidency, as he reported a loss from a slump in his business interests. The records released yesterday by the Democratic-led House of Representatives Ways and Means Committee shows Trump's income and his tax liability fluctuated dramatically during his 4 years in the White House. The committee has questioned the legitimacy of some of the deductions, including one for $916 million, saying his returns are short on details. The release of the records brings to an end a years-long battle by the former president to keep the documents private, as his cloudy financial past continues to stoke controversy. This also comes at a time when the businessman is mounting another bid for the White House. Gold is trading at $1,819.51 an ounce. The rand's at 17.20 to the dollar, 20.79 to the pound, 18.25 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $82.08 a barrel.
In the traffic, we have slow-moving traffic on the R80 south going towards Eskia Patile Drive. And then if you are in Danville, there is still slow-moving.
Performed all over the world, so I'm looking forward to getting to know her much better between 10 and 11 o'clock. And then at 11 o'clock we do our Thursday dialogue. On this segment we pick an important issue to discuss with a panel, and our discussions are always based on a question. And today I'm asking, have we demonized African spirituality and rituals? And how can we allow for the evolution of such rituals while reclaiming them? I mean, African tradition has been long expressed in many different forms, whether it's music, it's dance, art, beadwork, right? There are other rituals as well. But African rituals, like other phenomena of African cultural heritage, have been faced with criticism of being either superstitious, fetish, mundane, simply irrational. I mean, if we go back to history, since the missionary era of the early 19th century, there's been this gradual demonization of traditional African religions and its rituals. And I guess the portrayal of African spirituality in mainstream media hasn't really helped much, has it? Huh? And not all rituals are perfect, right? That's not what I'm saying. I don't think all rituals and traditions should continue being practiced in the way we used to practice them. Hence, I mentioned that traditions, rituals have to evolve because we evolve as a people. I mean, when you look at like the wife inheritance, that's still one of the most bizarre taboo rituals that is still practiced in many communities. Male circumcision with a knife, that's another one. You know, these can't have space in our society today. So which African practices, traditions or rituals do you think have been demonized or cast aside over the years? And how can we allow for the evolution of these traditions and rituals, but also reclaim some that are still so significant to us? Let me know on 011-883-0702 when we start the conversation at 11 o'clock. That's the show coming up over the next 3 hours.
702. Let's walk the talk.
So I'll go to your calls on 011-883-0702, your WhatsApps on 072-702-1702. I want to ask you about some of the things that you think about the new NEC. Yeah? Are there any surprises for you from this NEC list that was announced yesterday? I mean, there's some few surprises, some new additions, some people were booted out. Pravin Gordon, David Mabuza, Blade Nzimande, Derek Hanakom, Jeff Khadebe. Those are the people that have been booted out. Nosibu Mapisa Ngakula as well. Even Tony Ngeni, Maitengwana Mashabani, Natim Tetwa, Matole Mutsekha, Baleka Mbete, Tula Senglesi, they are out. Even Musebenzi Zwani, Bongani Bongo, Colin Mainis, Dumo Dlamini, Siyabonga Twele, Mwakura Matlodi, Sylvia Lucas. And then you've got a few relatively younger leaders elected to the NEC, who are in fact former ANC Youth League leaders like Soviet Likhanyani, Mzwandile Masina, Kusela Diko is now elected to the NEC, Jabulo Nzunza, Tandimuraka, even Andile Lungisa. Oh, and Batabile Dlamini, who was, remember, she was disqualified by the electoral committee. She's been elected too, even Tutuzi Manana. So the new NEC has to decide how they deal with their election. But here's a broader conversation I want us to have. How inclusive is the ANC? Is it still a broad church? Is it still the leader of society? When you look at the top 7 or even this top 80 member NEC, there's only probably one white person in the NEC, Barbara Krisi. And remind me if you remember another one. Phoebe Potgieter, probably one who's colored that I've picked up, or mixed race. And the question is, are there no white people anymore who support the ANC, or colored people, or Indian people? Or they are there, but they're just not interested in being part of the leadership? Or do you feel like they're being sidelined? Because the ANC has always claimed to be this broad church, right? But when you look at their leadership structure, that is not reflected. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Give me a call on 011-883-0702. You can send your WhatsApps on 072-702-1702.
Your voice,
Your station.
your open line
Walk the talk with Clement Manyatela.
on 702.
I also want to know from you if you have borrowed anything yet from your neighbors. First of all, the first question is, do you even know your neighbors? Because when we got to the suburbs, we are often so secluded. And it's happened to many of us where we don't necessarily get to be intentional about getting to know our neighbors. I've lived in one place for a long time and I didn't even know who my neighbor was. And I often ask myself, what happens when the house is on fire and you're away? Or your neighbor is the only one who can assist you at that point? Do you even have their contact? Yeah? So what if, number one, do you know your neighbor? What have you done to know your neighbor? And if you need stuff, is your neighbor the first person that comes to mind? Have you borrowed stuff from your neighbor before? Have you asked for help from your neighbors before? I had an incident a couple of days ago when I was hosting book club, and I was trying to prepare a meal for my club members, and I realized that I ran out of olive oil. And ordinarily, I wouldn't have texted a neighbor. I would have just gotten into the car, and go get it. But it was different this time around because I have formed a relationship with like a few neighbors where I live. So I just went and sent a message on one of our groups, and I told one of the neighbors that I need this. And there's one of them who responded almost instantly and sent her kids over to my house to deliver the olive oil, and which was really helpful. And then I was caught in this situation where I'm wondering, okay, what do I do now? Do you use the oil and then take it back, or do you buy a new one? And I did offer to take like a new oil that's still full, as just being courteous. But my neighbor said, no, I will not take it. She refused. But what's the best way to do it? Because even at home, back at home, it was very easy to borrow stuff from the neighbors. It was very easy, that's what we do. You run out of maize meal, you run out of oil, they are there to assist. It's not a big deal, And then, when you get paid month end or you buy the maize meal, you take it in that, Tupperware or whatever, container you used to borrow, and you take it back. And things are different now. So I'm like, okay, do I take you out on a drink to show my appreciation to you, for lending me, for helping me out? How does it work with you? Or are you a type that you would rather get into your car and drive to get whatever you need than borrow? That ask for help from your neighbor. 011-883 0702. Your WhatsApp's on 0727021702. Ibrahim, you calling us from Benoni. You want to talk about this ANC NEC? Good morning.
Yes. I think good morning to you and all the listeners. I think my issue is that I've been a member of the ANC for a long time, okay? But I also want to the fact that I think the member of the ANC, I must not be voted in as an Indian or colored. I am of Indian descent, okay?
Yeah.
So if I am voted in because I'm Indian, that would be a very big mistake. It's the same. The NEC that has come in represents the NEC of the ANC. They come, and out of the 7, there are 6 of them from one province, but they represent everybody in the country. All 9 provinces are represented. So I think we mustn't put ourselves in the spot that the issue of racism is never going to end. I feel comfortable in the ANC. I belong to a very vibrant branch of the ANC. I go to the meetings. I don't feel discriminated against. In fact, I am voted in to do certain tasks, and I've never felt different about it. So I think what is key is don't put ourselves in compartments.
Yeah. Oh, your line, Ibrahim. Not so happy with that.